All right, good evening. I would like to call the Cascade Charter Township Planning Commission meeting to order for Monday, December 6, 2021. At this time, I'll record the attendance. All members are currently present with the exception of member Moxley and members Merlin, which I believe are probably just running a moment behind. With that, we will move forward to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Article 3 is to approve the current agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Member Nordyke, Member Deering for the support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, I think we're good there. Article 4. Anyone have a conflict of interest they wish to disclose this time? Hearing none, we will move on to Article 5. Approve the minutes of the November 8, 2021 meeting. This was a while ago. It took me a little bit, but it seems to be as I remember.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Support.
Thank you, Member Nordyke. Thank you, Member Korsich for the support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Article 6, approve the minutes of the November 15th meeting. Any discussion on that?
I was absent, so I can't make the motion.
Me neither. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Support. Thank you, Member Deering and Member Rappin. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Moving forward. Article 7 is to acknowledge any visitors wishing to speak. Comments are limited to 5 minutes per speaker. If there's anybody out there in Zoom world and you wish to contact us electronically, you can raise your hand or press *9 on the telephone. And I'm assuming the two gentlemen that are here for Article 8, which we'll get to in a little bit. This is anything that isn't already on here for a public hearing. So if you're here for another reason, now would be the time to speak. I'm assuming you guys don't want to speak about anything else. Okay, then we'll move right on to Article 8.
All right, so the applicant's here requesting a type 1 special use permit to allow for an accessory building over 832 square feet. Property is located on the west side of Buttrick Avenue at 52nd Street. The building will be 42 by 60 feet for a total size of just over 2,500 square feet. And they're showing a height of 25 feet tall measured to the midpoint of the roof. So that height requires a setback of 60 feet to the side and rear property lines. And on the site plan, they're showing the nearest property line there would have a setback of 350 feet, also having a setback of 175 feet from the front property line. This one is a little different that the building would be replacing a former barn that was burned down, but there's no home located on the property. Typically, that's a requirement for an accessory building. The applicant did receive a variance from the zoning board at their June 8 meeting to permit an accessory building on that property. And the minutes from that meeting are included in your packets. The applicant indicated they plan to use the building for storage of equipment that will be used to maintain the property. And the building will have metal roofing and wood siding. The size of the building, I'd say, is normal considering the large size of the parcel there. The applicant appears to meet our standards for an accessory building, so I'm recommending approval of the special use permit with the 2 following conditions. That along with being in compliance with all other zoning regulations, the building's not used for living space or to run a business, and any outdoor lighting meets our regulations.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions of staff at this time? Seem pretty straightforward to me. But does anybody have any questions of the applicant at this time? Would the applicant come forward, please? State your name and address for the record, please, because our minutes are taken off of a recording of the meeting.
Yeah, it's John Ronici. My home address is 7150 Gladys Drive, Grand Rapids.
I recognize that address.
How you do?
Yeah, I do.
How you grew up?
What's that?
Did you grow up there? Is
I
that
grew up at that address.
okay? Gotcha. Yes.
You've since torn the home down, but
That's right.
my question for you is.
Yeah.
My question for you, what is any material differences between, the barn size or anything that you disclosed, from the barn that was there? I understand the circumstances.
It was a barn from the probably turn of the century. It was all wood. And the foundation's in disrepair, so that's why we can't really use the foundation. There's a lot of cracks and it was burned down from arsonry. So that's, we just want to build it back. It's a little, we're putting it in essentially the same spot. Just taking out the foundation.
So roughly same size, same use.
Probably, yeah, same use. Well, actually, it was, we didn't have any implements in there, but we will have, tractors and things that would go in there. So.
What about the size? Sorry.
The size, I think it was relatively close. This one's a little bit more longitudinal than square, but.
Okay.
Same. So we'll still have wood on the outside and a metal roof like the other one had as well.
Okay. Any other questions of the applicant? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
With that, I would entertain a motion to go into a public hearing on this matter.
I would move to go into public hearing.
Thank you, Member Rappin.
Support.
Thank you, Member Deering. All those in favor to go to public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? I see we have no members of the public in the room. Do we have any Zoom participants that may wish to? No? Okay. I'd make a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close.
Thank you, Member Carson. Thank you for the support, Member Rappin. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, back at it. Any discussion on this matter or anyone wish to take any action? Member Rappin.
Yes, just to confirm, I assume not, but Brian, were there any other comments submitted to you?
I did not have any submitted, no.
Thank you.
I can take a stab at it.
Please do.
Okay, make a motion in the case 21-3685 Renucci that we approve with staff recommendations.
Thank you for the support, Member Kirstich, and the motion, Member Nordike, to approve with staff recommendations. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? You're all set. Thank you. Next up on the agenda is Article 9, approval of the 2022 meeting schedule.
So at our last, I think it was our last meeting, we brought a draft meeting schedule. It just need to be looked at for elections. So there would be a few elections, so we move a couple dates to accommodate those. So in your packet there, you see the list of our dates. Again, most of them are the 1st and 3rd with a few changed due to holidays or elections there. So just need a motion from the Planning Commission to approve that 2022 agenda tonight.
Looks good to me. I don't have any questions on it. We already saw this once before and we all said that, excuse me, we were okay with it. We ready to make that official?
I would move to approve schedule as shown.
Support.
Thank you, Member Rappin and Member Deering for the support to approve our schedule. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Boy, we are just getting things done at an efficient pace this evening. Article, boy, we're going so fast, you can't keep count. Article 10, Planning Commission bylaws discussion. Yes, this one is maybe not going to move quite as accelerated. So we had talked about bylaws. The previous, and my understanding is, giving a little background on this, the previous law firm the township used felt that the zoning ordinance of the township, section 23, which has our bylaws, was adequate and we didn't need anything else. My understanding is that other attorneys such as Cliff Bloom have expressed concern over the fact that we didn't have our own bylaws at different times. And the new attorney, Foster and Swift, also recommended that we have our own bylaws. And we had this discussion earlier in the year. And so they drafted bylaws and sent them over. And I don't know, about a week ago or so, Brian and myself and Ben went through the draft And we found, boy, Brian, what was it, maybe a half dozen little subtle wording changes. There were a couple of typos and there were some, for instance, I'll give you an example. Probably the biggest change is Rule 2.2, Section C. It said that it was flip-flopped. So it said one member of the Zoning Board of Appeals must be appointed to the Planning Commission. It's actually the way it reads correctly here in the draft now. But so we made some subtle changes. Essentially, this is a draft. We're looking for your input on it. We are not, we don't have to have these specific bylaws, but this fit what the zoning ordinance says. And it also adds some more meat to it. We can put whatever we want in the bylaws as long as they don't disagree with the zoning ordinance. If they disagree with the zoning ordinance, then we would have to change the zoning ordinance. We can make the recommendation to the township board to do that if we feel we need to. The thought was that there really wasn't a need to change it. We just wanted to have our own bylaws so that we were, if you will, protected on all sides. So we put this together and thought we'd send it out to you guys to see what you think. If you read section 23, most of this comes from that section. Also, I make a note in the minutes that member Moxley has joined the meeting at 7:10.
My apologies, Mr. Chairman. I got overwhelmed by too much stuff going on. No
Well,
excuses.
it's okay. It's not a habitual offense for you, so we'll let it slide this evening.
Sorry about that.
It's all right. So yeah, so basically, I think I'm done talking about the bylaws now. I'll let you guys ask questions or thoughts, comments, discussion.
I have a comment to make, just that, reading through just, going through one time, I found many of the things in here, I already knew, but would have been helpful when I first joined the Planning Commission. So I'm really happy to see that this is put in place and that we actually can share that with new members when they come on board.
It's funny you mentioned that because I had the same feeling.
Okay.
And I actually wrote there's a little off topic, but I am putting together I don't know, it's maybe a couple page document that I will pass on to whomever the next chairman is of items. One of them happens to be to read in that document, it's a section 23 because we don't have bylaws yet, but that's one of the things I have highlighted in there just to try to have everybody be up to speed on a lot of things. Because I've been here for, I don't know, this is what, my third term, so I've been here 7 years and I'm still picking up things. I'm still learning things that I didn't know. And so yeah, so I agree with you there. Yes, member Moxley.
You and I communicated about this earlier today.
We did.
I, as a member of the zoning board, if I vote on some issue with the zoning board of appeals, should I refrain from voting if it comes up before the planning commission, which will happen tonight?
It's actually the other way around. If there's a matter at the planning commission, the only way to appeal that is through the zoning board of appeals before it goes to the court of law. So if we let's pretend for a minute, we approved a subdivision and then something we approved in there is appealed at the zoning board. You would not see the case at the zoning board of appeals. Your alternate would step in. But that's the idea there. It's not the other way around. Very rarely does something at the zoning board come in front of the planning commission because it's a zoning board of appeals. So you go there to appeal the decision of this commission, and that's when you would step aside.
The way it's worded in here, it sounds like what you said.
Wait a minute, we're talking about the bylaws.
Yeah. And so it does.
Which
sound
section?
backwards.
Which section?
Section 1, the last section 22C on the second page of it.
Person who is the
At the
planning commission
top,
member
planning
who has
commission.
member may not vote on the same matter voted on as a planning commission member. Right, so it says if he's a planning commission member, he cannot vote on it at the zoning board of appeals. If it was the other way around, it would say on the same matter voted on as a zoning board of
Okay.
appeals member.
Voted is
right.
past tense. Got it.
Correct.
Confused me.
Yeah.
Yes,
It
we,
wasn't until you said it out loud, I was like, oh, that's past tense. That
Well,
makes sense.
and we had this discussion because that was one of the things that we were discussing because the wording on the original draft
Mhm.
was incorrect.
Okay.
It had said that one member of the zoning board of appeals must be appointed to the planning commission, and that's why we changed it, because it's the other way around, and that is indeed how our ordinance reads. Yes, member, I need to make a note that member Merlin is joining the meeting. Yes,
Yes, my apologies for the delay in getting here.
that's okay. I hope you have some great news, though. No?
No,
Oh, I thought maybe you brought us all ice cream or something. Okay.
no, but we can go roll in the snow and make snow angels. Which actually, when discussing these bylaws, would be a step forward. These bylaws do not do that which Mr. Homier and we had discussed in terms of what we wanted the bylaws to do. If you recall, there was a discussion that the current bylaws are found in chapter 23 of the zoning ordinance.
That's correct.
These bylaws, in effect, simply restate chapter 23 of the bylaws with some minor variations, which I don't understand. So they don't provide, and the reason to move the bylaws out of the zoning ordinance was to allow us more flexibility in how we self-govern ourselves. And why, as Mr. Homier said, it is incredibly rare that you would ever find the bylaws in the zoning ordinance, which has to go through hearings and whatnot to change. So the goal was to create a set of bylaws which we would like to be able to use and which would be more efficient for us, and that could be more flexible and be changed by the planning commission as needed, and leave the zoning ordinance to those things which don't change very often.
But we can change these as needed.
You can't change these as needed when the first provision
Well,
of these
we
says-
can change these as needed as long as they don't conflict with the zoning ordinance. If they
Any
conflict with the
change
zoning ordinance, we have to go back to change that.
Yeah, but essentially any change in these, since they are the zoning ordinance, would be a conflict with the zoning ordinance.
Well, that's not necessarily true. I mean, we could put in that we all have to wear blue shirts every time we have a meeting, and that would not conflict with the zoning ordinance.
It would
because the
con-
zoning
it would
ordinance does
conflict with
not-
Good fashion.
Yes, that is right. But I guess my point is there's a lot of things we could do without conflicting with the zoning
Right.
ordinance.
But what we ought to be doing, and when I talked to Mike Homier during the budget workshop, which was a travesty for anybody not on the board of trustees, may have been for those on the board of trustees as well, but it certainly was for the public. But what we wanted to do is be in a position that we could change them without the need to worry about their conflicting with the zoning ordinance. You will note that in the memo we got on the Open Meetings Act, there was a lot of discussion there as to, well, we can't do something unless it's authorized by our charter or the zoning ordinance. There are two ways to look at the law. One can look at a law and say you have to comply with every provision, or you just can't violate a provision. What you were talking about there is you can't violate a provision. So everyone needing to wear blue shirts would not violate. It'd be perfectly legitimate, though again, not very fashionable. But the goal was, why subject ourselves to procedural rules that every time we looked at something, we had to look at the zoning ordinance to see whether we were consistent with it or not, and whether that would represent a violation or not. rather get them out of the zoning ordinance. And when I talked to Mr. Homier late this afternoon, with respect to that question, he said, what we should be doing is taking a look at these bylaws and deciding what things we would like to change. And then what Foster Swift should do is send us a missive of some sort that would say, here are the things you ought to think about when you make those decisions. And then we come up with an amended form of bylaws that we like. And since we are going to be suggesting, I think, if I read the Round Hill Subcommittee sentiment properly, we are going to be suggesting some changes to the zoning ordinance in several places. So this will simply become one more of those changes. Then we'll have our procedural bylaws, which we can then deal with as we think best. Again, we can't violate the law, but the law is not found in our zoning ordinance. The law is found in the statutes of the state of Michigan. But other than that, we have flexibility. One of the issues, for example, is the 3 consecutive not coming to the meeting.
I'm sorry, what are you referring to?
You
Before
have
we-
to. Yeah,
Can I
so-
ask a question before we go
I
further
want to
into the
too.
review? Before we get into item by item, I just
I
have a
would.
clarifying question. Scott, I thought that you started this conversation by saying the intent was to pull these out of the ordinance. By reviewing the bylaws, that's the first step. And then I read Rule 11 as the method for how we would change these over time. So the bylaws and procedures can be reviewed and amended from time to time. By pulling this out of the ordinance, we don't have to redo the whole ordinance every time we want to make a change. So
Well, the first rule 1 says that they have to match the zoning ordinance, but that they may, if they are in, yeah, they're not supposed to conflict with the zoning ordinance. This is section 23. So, I mean, what Craig is saying is that basically we can create bylaws and then we can ask the township board to essentially get rid of section 23 because the bylaws would be replacing it.
Replacing portions of it.
Right. Now, the question is whether or not the township board would go along with that. We don't know. I mean, but that's one way to do this. Another way is to write bylaws that, you know, if we don't have anything we want to add that is conflicting with the zoning ordinance, then this would be an easier path to take. But if we did make recommendations to change other parts of the zoning ordinance, we could tag them all together. My question here is that if, I mean, you're telling me that you've been in communication with the township attorney about this, then why did they send us this draft if they are in disagreement of
Who
it?
wrote
And
this?
why are they wasting our time with this draft? Why didn't we get a
That was the
different one?
question I asked him.
Yeah, I mean,
Exactly that question. Because I said, Mike, you and I discussed many moons ago, when I first came onto this commission, that you said, and I recall, having bylaws in the zoning ordinance makes no sense because it is unduly restrictive of the flexibility that this commission should have, subject to the board agreeing. And I said, then why did you send us the zoning ordinance? And he said, well, you have to start somewhere and then you guys have to decide what you want. And I said, well, I always look at outside counsel as providing wisdom from experience in at least raising the issues we ought to, or might think we should consider. And then telling us what the majority of townships might have or not have. And we can then make a decision and they will write up something that we do want to have. And that we would then go through a process of going to the Board of Trustees and saying, but only after I would put it with what, if anything, this commission wants to suggest in terms of revisions to the zoning ordinance as a result of the Round Hill factual investigation.
all right, I want to hear what she has to say.
I have maybe 3 points.
Go for it, go for it.
My first one was just something you just said, that happens quite a bit here, and I feel sometimes lost, like, okay, I know I read my email. But one of the things you mentioned was the memo about the Open Meetings Act that we all got. I don't know what you're talking about. So sometimes things like this happen at this meeting, like, okay, did we get an email with a memo about the Open Meetings Act that I missed in my email?
I think
Or
Craig got the memo of the Open Meetings Act.
I thought I got it from you, but,
I thought you forwarded it to me.
well, we can send it around.
Okay, that's my
So
point.
what happened here, right, and what
it
happened
doesn't
here?
matter what happened.
Well,
My
no,
point
but it
is-
does, it does, this is it does,
know,
and this
it's
is a
our
great
problem.
example, okay? In this, in Craig, to his credit,
I read
he-
the point
he-
about ex parte communication.
right,
so I'm
well,
just
I
saying-
think he may have opened this door before he was on the planning commission. But he had communication with Foster Swift regarding bylaws and
Things.
Open Meetings Act and rules of conduct and whatnot. And so coincidentally, when he ended up on the planning commission, they sent a lot of communication to him on those topics. And so he kind of became the front man for a lot of that communication. And then he forwarded it on to myself and I think Steve Peterson. So it is, so the flow of communication came, usually it starts there and works its way here and then disseminates, and it kind of went the opposite direction. So that's why there's some bumps in the road.
Okay,
so to
I'm just
speak.
saying there's not maybe every other meeting that I hear that I'm out
Yes,
of the loop. And I
yes.
feel extremely frustrated sitting on the planning commission, knowing
Mhm.
that normally I have a pretty good memory and I do read my email, and to not get something but to hear it like you all got. And it's frustrating to me because we didn't all get it.
Right.
Well, I
And-
have
and-
the opposite. I have no memory at all, so. But you are correct. It is a process flaw that we have. If I got it, I would have sent it to Scott and then,
And I didn't send out the OMA stuff or because that was related to the Round Hill Subcommittee, which we discussed at the Round Hill Subcommittee. And the rules of conflict, we haven't gotten to it yet. And we haven't put them on the agenda to talk about them yet. So I didn't put that on there. But I did send out the draft for the bylaws because that's the conversation we're
I'm
having.
just saying.
So I'm trying to deal.
I don't want to sit at a meeting.
To go down the punch list of all these items, but I
we
don't
should
want them
do a
all
better
in one
job,
meeting.
and we should. I mean, I send them to you as chair,
Mhm.
and I probably should say, and you should probably send them around to everyone. Though the Open Meetings Act memo, I think, arrived when I was in the hospital.
The newest.
The newest.
Yeah, that we can all be liable and.
But that's not related to process. That's to a specific case, which this is not.
Right.
Right.
So
Well,
back to my, sorry.
Excuse me, that actually isn't so true. And then I'll.
She's got 2 points and I think Timmy had a comment.
No, I think the reason I say that isn't quite true is because we asked some specific questions with regard to the Round Hill Subcommittee and Open Meetings Act.
Oh, yes, what I
Months
was,
ago.
yes, I'm speaking in generalities with some of the legal on format of meeting it would not be held under the Open Meetings Act because it is unrelated to a case. When it does relate to Round Hill, absolutely.
But she took the opportunity to respond months later after we'd agreed that all our meetings would be open to the public, so she didn't need to respond at all.
Yeah.
And put some extra caveats in there that seemed to throw roadblocks in the Round Hill Subcommittee's path.
Yeah.
Which,
Just say, I thought it was great that you guys left them open to the public. I thought it's one
which,
of the great things.
I mean, it struck me as one of several things that were coinciding to try to put roadblocks in our path, which got my due diligence tingly antenna from My Favorite Martian, if any of you are old enough to remember that show, got them tingling. But anyway, that's why,
And that's not to suggest that like there should be a round robin email and all this stuff.
yes, there
So,
should.
And I have a question, Brian. Where are we with the email addresses we asked for 18 months ago?
I have not heard anything new from Supervisor Swayze, or I'm sorry, Township Manager Swayze recently on that. The last thing I think we heard was we were trying to decide, right, if we're going
Member
cloud or
Nordhook,
not.
can you pressure the,
I have a couple times.
all right, I'll reach out directly to the manager and the
Yeah,
supervisor.
I will
This
too.
I will
is,
do that tomorrow morning.
I think we all should reach out directly because I think that
Yes.
it's very
we need them.
important.
Long enough.
No,
Yeah.
they are in the process. That was
Yeah.
something that some.
The last we heard was that it was a switching servers.
I'm in that business. Let me tell you, that takes all 48 hours.
Yeah, so that's my point, is that's the last we
I mean, that's-
heard.
that's-
It's been months. That was July.
What we have, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Our IT at our office, and I'm telling you, I can give somebody an email in literally 2 minutes.
Right, that's what I'm saying. We heard that in July.
But even switching from servers to the cloud, that is a 48-hour proposition.
Yep.
This
Just
is a,
did it.
yeah, that's a point of frustration. So I'll take it up directly with the manager and I would
Like
encourage
I
all
said,
other members to do the same.
Yeah, I think we all should.
Well, yes, I think when the former planning director had to go to the town manager to get a cone and some warning tape at the back of the library where that cliff was to get approval for it. We've got a fundamental lack of ability to move efficiently in the township.
Yes, member Carstens.
My other two
Pushing a rope.
pieces for my, oh, wait, sorry, do you need?
I just pushing a rope, that's all, that's what it is over there.
So my other two questions or points, I guess, there are some questions, some points. I kind of like the bylaws. They're very general, which I think is kind of nice. They give some structure. I do think the rule number 1 about the chapter 23 of the zoning ordinance, that I do agree that you had mentioned something about maybe seeing if the board would take out kind of the bylaw piece to that ordinance would be nice, so that they are two separate things. But my opinion personally, I just feel like other than maybe adding some things where we want to, I hate to get too detailed in things because it does limit certain things where I
Agreed
thought they
fully.
were, I
Yeah.
thought they were very, like you said, as a new person, I think that they would be very informational to somebody who is new starting out. They do give us some bumpers on the outside. I think my personal opinion, the only hiccup to me is the rule number 1 with chapter 23. The rest of it, I think is good.
Member Merlin.
I have one technical point and then a couple of things just to point out. The technical point is I don't want my bylaws written as rules. They are written with articles and sections. They are not written as rules. That is just ridiculous. But I have never seen a set of bylaws
I agree
written
with
with
you.
rules.
I
I'm
agree with you.
surprised that they wrote them that way because now you mentioned it, I would agree.
Yeah, it's just,
Is that
Is it a
because,
government thing though?
well, I'm wondering if in the zoning
Maybe.
ordinance, they're listed as rules.
no, they're not.
They're not? So she typed them up this way.
Yeah. Very peculiar.
Yeah.
She also changed some of these in ways that made them less flexible even than the zoning ordinance. For example, in 2.2, she says the planning commission shall consist of 9 members representing all major interests present in the township. 9 members cannot represent all the major interests in this township. The zoning ordinance talks about representing the major interests in the township and doesn't focus on all.
So can we just strike that word?
I think that would be a wonderful
Yes.
idea.
I had a note on the same 2.2, consisting of 9. Is it exactly 9 or is it up to 9? Like what would happen if one goes away? Are we no longer a commission until
As
we're
a-
back up to 9,
Right.
or can we still function at 8?
I think
for
the
the time
quorum,
being.
you base the quorum off 9, as I understand it. So I
And
think that's why it says 9.
Precisely.
That's the authorized number. And then if someone resigns or leaves, then you have a vacancy and there are provisions to fill the vacancy.
So should it say shall consist of up to 9 members?
We
Because
can
like
ask
right
that
now, we're an
question.
8-member planning
Right,
commission.
but he's
that's-
saying, are we really a 9-member planning commission
Right.
with 1 vacancy?
if we
So
had,
still
I
have-
see what you're saying.
Do
We
you know
still
what I
have
mean?
the
We
spot,
still
it's just
have
vacant.
9, but we have a vacancy.
right,
Okay.
if we were up to 9 and we had 8 for a period of
Somebody
time,
could decide not to fill.
right, that we had no vacancy. We
Yeah.
just had an 8-member
I see.
planning commission at that point. So that is one. The,
5, 7, or 9 is what's allowed.
Uneven numbers.
Typically,
We
right.
chose 9, but it could be a 5 or a 7.
I think they chose, when I've asked about that, they chose 9 for attendance reasons, so they could guarantee a quorum.
and it also does provide for more of
Major interest.
the major interests, people with different perspectives.
Mhm.
And different competencies.
Sure.
In 3.3, the zoning ordinance in the second sentence talks about unexcused failure to attend 3 consecutive regular meetings or miss more than 50% of the meetings within a 12-month period shall be considered nonfeasance in office. She took out unexcused. So I think that is a significant
Oh,
change. If you're in the hospital for an extended period of time, you might just miss 3 in a row. And so be it. I mean, I would have missed 2 because of if we had those meetings, we canceled those meetings.
I almost wonder if it states the way it states, but then there's like a clause in addition to that for something similar to what you're saying, like being in a hospital, something.
well, and it says here it's basically up to the chair to initiate any of that action.
Right, but
No, it says you shall.
yeah.
Well, it says to, yes, that's
Yeah.
right.
So I almost think, because I do think like just personally, if I fail to attend 3 meetings and don't tell anybody about it, or even if I did tell you 3 meetings, it's a long time. I almost think there should be some kind of clause where it's like subject to.
I mean, excused,
something.
unexcused absences would in theory do that.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that there should be more, I don't know, I think that I like the fact that it has to be initiated by the chairperson, but
Might change the shall to may.
well, right, I think that's probably the right way to do it, because, I mean, the
Yeah.
theory is that person is going to look at the situation and say, well, yeah, the guy, he had a massive heart attack and, he's been laid up for 3 months, he'll be back.
Right.
Okay, I mean, there's gotta be a
agree.
person to apply some common sense to read between the lines.
It would be nice too if it came to us to propose for you to send something to them.
Sure.
Do you know what I
and-
mean? Like, 'cause
Yeah,
if,
yeah.
so then it's not all just on you, but because
Mhm.
to me, like what you're saying, if somebody's in the hospital for a while, there's no reason that I don't think any of us would say, oh, no, get rid of them.
So
Oh,
there
maybe-
there is another section, 6.2, that talks about attendance, and it's a little more lenient.
Which contradicts that.
Well, a little bit, yes, and I noticed this when I was reading earlier today, that they were slightly different.
Yes, this is the section I like better, I
Yeah.
think. This one.
Because
is-
it allows for the or more than 50% of the
Right.
regularly scheduled meetings in a calendar year, subject to review and possible recommendation for removal to the township
I
board.
think that
Exceptions may be made.
That-
if
That
absences
makes
are-
way more
We
sense.
should just remove the earlier sentence.
Is it redundant? Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
would
We
they?
need it.
Yeah, remove the earlier one and just leave this
And
one
leave
in.
this
I
one
think we
in.
need to get a discount on the bill for these.
I agree.
So
Make
could
sure
we-
that's in the minute.
Could we just remove 3.3?
I agree.
3.3, move from office. I think so, because I think 6.
But you can't remove the first sentence.
No,
Still need to keep the removal part.
Mhm.
Right, the township board may remove members from the planning commission from office. Right,
And
then
then
maybe
just,
the first sentence
strike
needs
the
to stay,
rest.
the
Maybe.
rest gets struck. Who's taking notes of this?
I am,
Strike.
but
Or misdoing.
Okay, then I have 3.
do you want my scribble when we're done?
Sure.
Strike. Well, keep first sentence.
I just keep the first sentence and take the rest out.
Mhm.
The next question I have is in 4.1.
4.1, responsibility.
We must perform all the actions required by law. Well, I query whether we are doing so now with respect to our zoning, not our zoning, our planning responsibilities. We are doing fine with the material that the planning department brings to us for variances and for project approvals. But we also, under the Planning Enabling Act of the state of Michigan, have planning responsibility. That is our first duty, actually. 4.1.
Sorry.
And that gets to the comment that if we really are going to comply with the law of the state of Michigan, then certainly with regard to what is called a master plan, though in our zoning ordinance, comprehensive plan, master plan, strategic plan are all interchangeable, as it says, then we have to play a role in it, and we have to approve it before it goes to the board. The board could then disapprove what we submitted and suggest it to be reconsidered by us. We then can reconsider it, and we know that if ultimately we don't do what the board asks, we're subject to removal by the board. But there is that process to put the planning commission in the middle of, strangely enough, planning. And that's why we got involved at one point with suggesting the strategic plan, and the board got sort of incensed at that. And we came out with a compromise that we would have a larger role in it. But that started back even in January, when the strategic plan was identified as the board's strategic plan, and then was changed at the board meeting because of citizen comments to Cascade's strategic plan, Cascade Townships. Now we're going through the process of those surveys going out. And by the way, tell everyone, friends, neighbors, put it in little pouches that birds can fly around with and drop at other people's houses. Not with the other things they drop, about the survey to be filled out. But we still are going to go through that question of whether this is how responsive the board feels it must be to its citizens that it represents. So that must, I just call your attention to it, because literally it's true. If the statute says thou shalt do this, then thou shalt. But the statute isn't at all clear on what is a master plan versus what is a strategic plan versus what is a comprehensive plan. I think the amount of dust that sits on the top of it at the end of the process, or a year after the end of the process, will inform the fact that all three are the same. Which is why we're trying to make the strategic plan this year different, because there'll actually be actionable items that come out of the strategic planning process itself.
Okay.
I just raised that for all of us to focus on.
I filled mine out.
The next comment, which is the one Mike and I in our conversation have, well, two comments to make as a generic matter. The first is that Mike believes that the rules of conduct should be incorporated into this document. And we have the ex parte communications in here at this point. We don't have the rest of the rules of conduct. And frankly, in the few days I've had, I did not have the opportunity to compare it against the rules of conduct to see what is missing.
Well, we haven't discussed the rules of conduct yet as a planning commission.
Right.
So Brian and I talked about that, and my thought was that we would do the bylaws first, and then we would do the rules of conduct at possibly at the December 20 meeting or at the beginning of the year when we typically talk about the rules of conduct. This is usually the first meeting of the year. We have an election and we discuss rules of conduct and we remind each other to read section 23 of the zoning ordinance. So I don't know, that was,
Well, this does have in it the conflicts of interest section, which is in our rules of conduct. And it has in it an ex parte communication, which are in our rules of conduct already.
does.
And so would you propose to take those out of here? And put them in a separate document called the rules of conduct?
We could do that, or could we reference a separate document?
That's what I'm wondering, is if we can, I mean, it.
Because
this
then if
is
we
coming
change the,
first.
if we change the ex parte communication rules or the rules of conduct, then we don't have to necessarily amend the bylaws. We're just amending those
Oh, I agree with you.
exhibits.
We should not replicate them in two documents. Or we shouldn't duplicate them in two documents.
Just
Right.
reference them here.
Yes, the question only is whether you do it in one or two documents. You can amend a bylaw as easily as you can amend the rules of conduct.
I understand where you're
But the
coming
rules
from.
of conduct do provide a different role. I would not normally put conflicts of interest in a bylaw in a corporate setting. I'd have a separate policy on conflicts and rub people's noses in it because it is the most often, and Mike even said, in townships, it is the most fought over provision in any of the documents.
Any other thoughts on that, you guys?
I'd be in favor of pulling it into its own document that's referenced here.
Don't most organizations have a separate document that
Yes.
has to be signed on an annual basis
Have-
anyway?
Yes, every company that I have ever worked for or counseled has people sign an annual certification that they have read the rules of conduct and that they haven't violated them in the last year.
I agree, and I almost wonder if, when we talked about 3.3, the removal from office, if it's referenced in there, maybe something to do with the. rules of conduct.
Yes, if you violate this or the rules of
Yes,
conduct.
Or the rules of.
Like
conduct.
expectations of attendance.
Exactly.
Whereas this is the mechanism for removal.
Right, so the removal of office, if in that section, it references something to do with violating the rules of conduct, in addition to all of these other things listed,
Right, or if you violate the zoning ordinance itself.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You can be removed.
yeah.
Now, you guys tell me quickly, because I know you all looked it up, the difference between malfeasance, nonfeasance, and misfeasance.
I actually
I
did
had a
look them
test
up.
on this like maybe 25 years ago. And I'm old, so my brain is not remembering
Secretary
that.
might have the answer, right?
I actually looked it up and printed it out as from the Michigan Municipal Association,
It might have been on my boards.
but I
Non is where you don't do
perform.
something where that you're supposed to.
Miss is where you have intent
Yeah,
to
one's
violate.
intent
Violate.
and one is just like neglectful.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
But I had never focused on those because I don't put them in my bylaws normally.
So, okay, let me ask you this, in section 3.3, if we made reference to our rules
Of conduct
of conduct
and I think our attendance, which
and
I
our,
almost think then that, whatever. go
No,
ahead.
I think we don't need to make reference to our attendance because it's right back in.
later.
it's in
That's
6.2.
what I'm saying, never mind.
But in under removal of office, related to the rules of conduct, should it then say that if a majority of the planning commission, a majority of the planning commission members may ask the chair to make a recommendation to the township board to have this member removed?
I think that the planning commission should make a recommendation as a whole.
As a whole, okay.
That's my.
I
Well,
agree.
the reason I'm saying it the way I'm, well, the reason I'm wording it the way I am is because you may run into a situation where we all want to gang up on Timmy, okay? And maybe you want to do that in private, not out on open, in the sense maybe 5 people come and say, hey, this happened
Let me
and
just say, I feel like that's ex parte communication. I feel like if I have a
it probably
problem with
would be,
somebody,
wouldn't it?
that I should be able to sit here in this room and say, I have a problem with what you're saying about this, and stand up for it and voice my concern.
Okay.
And I feel, in my opinion is, if you don't feel the same, then you shouldn't be sitting here.
My concern is,
I agree with you.
my concern is a group of shy people, and I say this because having been sitting here for 7 years, I've had people come to me and say they had a problem with XYZ, but they won't speak up.
Your job is to support them, to say, I'm gonna bring it up and I'll mention it as an anonymous thing,
Okay.
and you need to support it while we're talking about
Yeah,
it.
And as a very
That's-
shy person,
well, I don't have this problem clearly, but I'm just throwing out these ideas. I want to make sure that we have in here what we want.
I feel like if something's gonna be recommended to the board for a removal of somebody on this planning commission, that one, if you do have multiple members, I do think, I don't know how this would work, that maybe it's fair to not maybe say it right in front of, we can ask the person to leave the room. I don't know how that works, but I just feel like I should feel confident enough to say something on record that is being recorded, to say how I feel.
I don't know, actually, one other aspect to this, which I haven't looked at. Would we be able to go into closed session?
Maybe that's what I'm kind
It
of
doesn't
thinking.
make any, I don't believe there's anything in section 23 regarding us going into closed session.
But the Open Meeting Act doesn't talk about that.
Piece.
No, the section or chapter 23 doesn't talk about the Open Meetings Act.
It doesn't. It
And
doesn't.
we are subject to the Open Meetings Act.
We are.
I know if you're doing a review of an employee, that in our township level, that can be in closed session if the employee requests it.
It can, but we're not human resources.
We are.
Yes, we are human
Yeah,
resources.
We are employees, are we not?
Yes, no, we are, but we are employees. But I'm saying that as well, I guess it depends on how you look at that, because that's a slippery slope if we're employees or not. But let's pretend for a minute that we are. Okay, my point is that we, as a planning commission, are not human resources or the township board, and they handle personnel issues. The planning commission does not. So I don't think the planning commission is afforded the ability to go into closed session to talk about itself. Or about a person.
I'll actually look at don't
Membership.
have the statute in front of me, and I will look at that. It may actually be part of the statute. There is a notion in corporate law that directors are different in one way, as would be commissioners, and that if the rest of the board, it may often takes a supermajority to ask someone to leave because of particular stated reasons. That person can stay or not stay in the meeting to rebut those reasons and potentially convert all the naysayers into, change the vote count. But I do think this is not a human resource function.
No, and I think that
Ultimately,
kind
a
of
board
ties
function.
into what we're saying too about, like, I think it would be super unfair for people to come to you in private to complain about one person on the commission, for you yourself to recommend to the board for them to be removed without us all discussing it and having them have the ability to
Well, I was
And
tell
kind
their
of
side
thinking,
of the story.
yeah. Well, and I suppose, in my case, if I was the chairman, I would bring it up and have all of you,
But
Discuss
some
it,
chairman
but-
might not.
but some chairman might not.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just thinking these things through out loud because I think that's important to do at this
In
point in
Just
the
being
draft.
fair, like, what if it was about you? I think that somebody should be able to come here to the meeting, like one of us,
Absolutely.
and say something about you, and we all discuss it, and you talk about your side of the story as well. I just think that's being adults.
Defend your honor.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. So the
Other than-
planning commission would then make the
Recommend.
recommendation to the township board to have a member removed. If they,
Specifying the reasons.
right, wrong color shirt or,
Yeah,
drove a foreign car, whatever it might be.
I do all of those.
Okay, all right. Okay,
Now, the next,
well, there's another one.
two with me, and I didn't even read these carefully. When we go back to the conflict of interest rules, which we can talk about at a different meeting because they're going to be in the rules of conduct.
Yeah.
These remain, in my humble estimation, and not being judgmental about them at all. And the proper legal term is dumber than dog shit. The rationale, for example, in item 1, 2, or 3, what if my wife
I
has
was
a
gonna say,
direct,
or family member.
has a direct family interest?
Yeah,
It's not a conflict.
I agree with you. There's something to do with like, or family member,
Yes, and you
Close family
normally have
member.
those, there's a definition of what you view as
close family.
immediate
members.
family or whatever with parents and brothers and children. This is
Well-
one that is geared to walk through, which means a politician wrote it.
I
Original.
thought our rules of conduct specifically stated those items.
The
though.
ones we suggested did.
The ones we're using right now don't, because I thought they did.
Well, if the only new certifications about conflicts of interest came from my pen and my recommendations based on the securities disclosure that one has to make for any public company in the United States, which actually go on for about 8 pages. We shortened it, but we certainly included the concept that you have a family that might be interested. I mean, that's just
Sure.
common sense. Yes, forgive my dumber than dog shit, but it is common sense that that be included. It's not in our,
Try to watch the language.
yes. Or is that malfeasance? I want to get off. I want to get off.
I don't want to get the calls. Okay,
Now, the other one I would say, by the way, which I take personal, I am personally very aggravated about on the conflict of interest rules, is number 3.
Wait, hang on.
This is on page 5.
Okay.
In
3. Are you talking A3?
4.4.
4.3, no, no, it's
4.4
4.4, A3.
A3.
And the reason for that is, this says that the rest of the planning commission would determine whether I have violated the code of professional responsibilities for lawyers.
Yeah, no.
That's
It's
inappropriate.
out of- Yeah, I agree with you.
The concept of this entirely is not appropriate.
Mhm.
So there is something in the legal code of ethics that talks about for using these same rules in how you deal in the broader community. In the preamble, it's not in particular rules because they have things about client relationships and, you know, if you know of a crime and all those things that go on interminably.
How, I got a question. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Should that be taken out completely or
Yes.
should, okay, be reworded? somehow to be more
A3 should
focused?
be-
Yeah, I feel like it should be gone.
Do you have in
I
the
was-
nursing profession,
Yes.
a code of professional
A
responsibility?
huge, and when we talked like COVID stuff earlier in the
Mhm.
spring, I do not want to be held professionally responsible in any way or any spirit of my code of professional. I just,
That is,
yeah, I agree
I mean, it subjects those of us
with license.
with
especially.
licenses, and you probably have one as an architect as
Yes.
well.
Yes,
Yeah.
I do.
Oh, you don't have anything.
Well, 3 or 4 of them.
I've got a chauffeur's license.
Can you
Does that
imagine
count?
if this, if what
Site
you said
applicator's
here
license.
affected that?
So I would just take that out. I don't know who put that in.
I don't either.
Does anybody here have any concern with striking A3?
None whatsoever.
4.4 A3. Brian, do you have any concern with that? Do you have any
We struck,
thoughts?
we
as to-
struck a bunch of stuff that I have crossed out here that we didn't make such a big deal.
No, I know. I'm just trying to make sure everybody's awake. You have to do that now and then as
Oh,
a
okay.
commentator, you're supposed to, reach out to make sure,
Move that we
like
ask
when
for
you're at
discount.
church and the preacher says, everybody, clap your hands or something, says a joke, gotta.
Just to get people.
Yeah, you gotta have reaction every now and then. Otherwise, you can drowse off.
I think we should march around the room in a protest.
No.
Um,
Moving right along,
yes. I then go to 5.5.
5.5. Oh, this one's a big
Actually, I go
section
to
too.
5.4.
Okay. Agenda. A written agenda of the order of business for all regular or special meetings may be developed by the planning director and the planning commission chairperson. The agenda may be supplemented or reordered by the planning commission during a meeting, provided the same complies with any applicable law.
Couple of concepts.
Mhm.
The person who should be in charge of the agenda for the planning commission is the chairman or chairwoman of the planning commission. This goes to that fundamental question that we are not part of the planning division of Cascade.
But I think.
I think the
but I
planning
think the
commission
developed-
is relying on staff input to create that.
I agree.
Because the planning commission chairperson's job is full-time job is not chairperson of the planning commission.
Why
And
isn't
I
it?
could see
And-
I could see having something in there in consultation with the.
It
planning
kind of does,
Absolutely.
it does say that.
It says developed by the planning director and the planning commission
Can we change
chairperson.
it to drafted and approved?
I think if we changed it
an
to
amendment.
shall be developed by the planning commission chairperson in consultation with the planning director.
But is that in fact how it
Well,
works?
but that's not
though?
really how it works, though. The planning.
Should it be drafted
The
and
planning,
approved?
the staff drafts it, the
Yes.
planning,
then
the
we can put in-
chairperson.
We can put
Approves
in
it.
the
Approves
second
it.
sentence that the planning director shall propose an agenda.
I kind of
I think
feel
the
that this
develops,
covers
I
it,
agree with
but
you.
I don't want the planning director to view us as part of his division, which the former planning director did.
But
okay.
I feel like this says
So you want
both.
to change the wording so that it's a little bit more.
Clear.
And maybe
clear.
it says and
Well, we talked a little bit about this when we were reading through it and I have, okay, so. A written agenda outlining the order of business for all regular or special meetings may be developed by the planning director and the planning commission chairperson. So maybe it should say, may be drafted by the planning director and approved by the planning commission chairperson?
that's what
Mhm.
I think sounds better.
What's the concern with that? Is there something we might be missing? That's why I'm
Yes.
asking. Yeah.
I don't want the sole drafting responsibility in the planning director.
I don't think this reads that way.
It doesn't now, but as we were just talking, it might. I would say the planning director shall be, I don't mind if it says shall be responsible for the first draft of the agenda, which shall then go to the planning commission chair, who shall have ultimate responsibility to complete to finalize the agenda.
Why can't it say what he said, which is the same, but not
Instead of
as
developed,
strict?
drafted.
Yeah.
Drafted
or
is
even
fine.
Drafted by the plan, or I don't even mind about developed, because it just means you put it together.
Yeah.
It may be developed by the planning director and
Approved by the planning commission chairperson?
Approved and as.
I think
he may
the
want to
idea-
supplement
Approved
it.
and or amended as needed.
that sounds good. Approved
Got it.
and or
There it is.
amended by the planning
Yeah.
chairperson.
Okay.
That sounds better to me.
I think
'cause
what
then
we
you
were
can-
going for here is we were trying to make the wording sound like we were working together on the agenda and not having one person make it and one person.
But
rubber
in
stamp
fact, the
it.
director reports to the chairman. I think that is in fact what Craig is trying to say.
Yes.
Yeah, and it was made clear in that first meeting I attended, when I asked where our reports were to the board that we were supposed to have provided. And he said those reports were his community development reports that he submitted to the town manager. And I said, but we're directed by statute to send those to the board. And secondly, we're not part of your community development department. Other than that, you got it right. But, and So I agree with what you're.
Okay,
like
let
to
me
put.
say it, because I
Please,
wrote it down,
please.
what you said, I think, but I'm not really certain. I want to make sure. So maybe developed by the planning director, and I hate having two and, so I put then amended and approved by the commission chairperson.
Approved and amended as needed.
What about, okay, I
Fine.
just thought you amended it before you.
Yeah, I would
approved
have
it.
put amendment before approval.
I agree. That's
Amended
what-
as needed.
Amended and approved.
Amended, I put amended and approved, which it means as needed.
And
You
as
wouldn't
a-
amended.
I-
it.
And
I
amended
think
as
so.
needed and subject to the final approval.
Yeah.
If you want to be long-winded and be
Do
paid
we want
by
to be
the word.
long-winded? Tell me
No.
somebody.
No, I
Don't wanna
think
be
the way you
long-winded.
have
Amended
it
and
is-
approved.
Amended
because
and
you're gonna
approved, I
amend
think
it
is
and then
is
approve it.
okay. Yeah,
Um,
we seem to amend every agenda, so
and then the last comment in 5.4.
I just reorder
is-
things just to upset Brian. I do it on a regular basis.
The last comment in that section is provided the same, it says complies with any applicable law.
Where are we? I'm sorry.
Same, section 5.4, last sentence.
Okay.
The agenda may be supplemented or reordered by the planning commission during a meeting, provided the same does not violate.
The same comply.
I like that.
Same
We don't need to comply. We just need to not violate.
Right,
Okay, say it again. Provided the same does not.
violate
violate. Okay.
any applicable law. And the reason is, yeah, it's, we don't have to find something to justify every action we take. We just can't find something that says what the action we're taking violates.
You can't break the law,
Right.
but you don't have to follow it.
A lawyer's skill is made by, unfortunately,
Do we want?
I think the word is nuanced.
Do we
So
want
that
it to
brings us
say
to-
the same or it does not violate?
Provided the same
So
does
we'll
not
keep- okay.
violate any.
All right,
yes.
Around
Got
this
that.
weekend.
Yep. I would then go down to 5.5.
We'll schedule before we leave.
And 5.5, in my estimation, is one of the things this planning commission has been very good about in contrast to the board. And that to put in the two sections that bother me are D and G.
D, no person may speak more than once during public comment, excluding any comments made at a public hearing. And G, the planning commission will generally not respond to public comments, but reserves the right at its sole discretion to make inquiries, correct factual errors, or provide any other information as is appropriate. I don't have a problem. Well, I
have a
think D
horrific
is
problem.
necessary because
I
if a person talks for 5 minutes, they don't get to talk again and have another 5 minutes.
Well, I think what it should say is a person may speak. Essentially, if everybody has spoken and the person wants to make a subsequent point, perhaps in opposition to a comment that was made after he or she spoke initially,
it's public comment. It's not public discussion or
Correct.
debate.
It's not public conversation, it is
debate.
public comment.
but that's where I think, again, if you were at the last board meeting and you had a shotgun, we would have fewer board members today. And that's not me.
I don't
That's
think you
very
should,
funny.
wait, I know, I don't think
I
you need to
Don't
say
think
that
it's
out loud.
appropriate for this
No.
conversation.
I know,
That's not-
and that's not me. I'm just,
Very inappropriate.
I agree. It's very inappropriate. But I wasn't the one, I was pissed royally, but I was not pissed the way
Okay,
the other people were.
let's get
who
back
I
on
went
track
out
here a
to.
minute. Let me just
But it
back-
goes to the notion of repeatedly asking questions and making comments and sitting in front of a stone-faced group of individuals who do not respond at all.
I don't
Well,
think it's
then-
appropriate.
then-
It's not necessary for a conversation. I agree that we need D and we need G.
I agree with you.
But maybe what we should say in G is that questions asked of the planning commission will be responded. I mean, we could have another letter in there. Okay, we could do H and say that the planning commission may choose to respond to questions asked in public comment And those will be answered in writing or some other, you know, I mean,
Wait, hang on. Are
It
you
would
saying
generally-
ask questions to the person who made the public comment, or, because that was the only thing, what
Well,
you
I
just
think- I
said
think
brought to me
I-
was like, if you get 2 minutes to speak,
they,
what if we do
right,
have
I think what,
questions for them that bring them past their time?
well, I thought he was asking,
Yeah.
I think his
it's a
concern is
different-
that we're not that if somebody stands up here and asks us why we approved that pole building today, we are not obligated to answer them.
I agree. with you.
But I think what he would like to see is he would like to see an avenue where they actually get an answer.
Yeah.
Because that is a frustration at the township board level sometimes. I know I've had it before, is that you ask a question
And it
and
just sits.
you don't get an answer.
Have
So,
Stone
is stone.
faces.
right, and so maybe there should be a provision here that says that you will get an answer. It might not happen right then because we want to collaborate and research and have staff look into it and find out, yes, that was built on such and such a date. And then we can
Okay,
respond.
So
I just-
questions asked during public comment may be,
If
all-
requested,
if requested, will be answered, may not be answered at the meeting, but will be followed up upon.
yeah, and then the planning commission can ask staff to respond to the question. You know, in a timely manner, whatever that is.
The
I would worry
word,
that may set an unrealistic expectation if everybody requested a follow-up. And
Probably.
I think this does exactly, I mean, I've heard you, I've heard past chairs respond. It says we generally will not respond, but it doesn't exclude us from responding.
I think
And I-
we've done a pretty good job of
we
responding to
have
things.
done a good job, but if we include this provision, this is right out of the Board of Trustees playbook. And it is getting people more and more upset.
And it doesn't already say this in section 23?
Oh, I don't know whether it does or not. I didn't look. It just is not something that I can look at it right here. I've got section 23.
Oh, do you? Okay, that'd be great. Yeah.
I just want to be careful that these are our bylaws and we're talking about
Right.
the trustees and
Yes.
a different meeting, a different group.
I agree, because
Yeah, our group
in
isn't
this
having
group
this problem.
has been, right. Right.
But this group, depending on its chairperson, you can make it more responsive or less responsive.
Actually, I think it's depending on all of the members. It's not just the chairperson, because anybody could speak up and say,
Right, you're right.
Okay.
Say the public participation.
I'm just in shock at the moment. I'm sorry.
I just think that too, it kind of, in it, I think the intent on the board level is maybe different than our appropriate intent of this that we're using here. Whereas if somebody stood up in front of us and asked us something ridiculous, we don't have to respond.
Which has happened many
Right.
times.
Right. And that's my point, is like, we're using this, I feel, appropriately to not respond to things that are ridiculous and out of the norm, that we would not want to engage in that conversation with somebody, because it would just further escalate their, and you don't want to escalate certain situations. Whereas I feel like what he's saying is on the board level, people are just asking some simple questions and they're not getting answers, but I feel like here they are.
But G covers that, does it not? I mean,
Yeah.
are we all saying that G is?
I think it's okay. but-
I'm good with G. Let's see a show of
Because-
hands. Who's good with G?
I think we're good with G, but I want to make, like, Craig, is there anything specific that you would tweak on this?
I would want an answer to the questions. If I were a citizen, I have no problem
Mhm.
with the commission not responding at the time.
Mm.
But if I ask a question that is generally of a factual nature, or have you considered X when you made that decision, I would expect the questions I put to the board, and I've got 3 layers of them now.
But okay, fairness, like,
Yeah,
you're
let's-
solving for the board, which I appreciate, and I get where you're coming from. But you're trying to solve for something that's not a problem at this moment.
So what if we just,
Oh, I'm
what if we just added a sentence that said the planning commission in,
At its sole discretion.
at its discretion will make a good faith effort to respond to inquiries in a timely manner.
I am much happier with that.
Perfect.
Isn't that exactly what it says, though? It says, in our sole discretion can provide any other information it deems appropriate.
No,
what
Is
it's
that not
saying is,
inclusive of a response to the question?
and I'm just experiencing what I have felt at the board level repeatedly.
I agree.
If we
but
have
I
to
think
add
that
a
we also-
sentence so that we all agree, I don't think that's a problem.
And I think we need to say this one more time, because I know you're looking at this. I think that this paragraph also protects us. If somebody, let's say with a psychological disorder, comes up in front of us and starts complaining about something that does not make any sense, that we do not want to engage in a conversation with that person, and it is out of our realm of anything we can help with, I think we should have the ability to sit here and not address them or respond to them.
We should say thank you for your comments.
I could make a very humorous joke right now, but I'll keep it to myself.
I guess why
Please.
I'm reluctant to
A
change
simple one
this.
is like road construction. We, in years past have had people,
Oh,
how come
yeah.
there is not a traffic light? You need to get, and
Speed limits.
like, and yeah, we'll generally
Right.
say, well,
School
that's the county.
buses.
We don't manage the roads and it's like, wow, hang on, you're the point, like, we don't manage the roads.
Well, I remember the discussion over the area in front of the library,
Mhm.
where there was a lot of people at the meeting.
Yeah.
And the question became, somebody said, I'm afraid, one lady who looked about 80 said, I'm afraid even to make a right turn off of, what is it, Jack Smith Road?
Yeah.
Because people are coming down 28th Street so fast. What is being done with respect to that problem if we're going to have functions there at the amphitheater, et cetera? And it was also parking was also an issue at that meeting of significance. And the answer from the township was, well, we don't have anything to do with roads, so it's not our responsibility. Of course, it's our responsibility. We can't put something in a place where we can't make sure our citizens are safely able to leave a function held at our facility. That may be hiring somebody as sort of a traffic cop or whatever, but we are responsible.
No, I appreciate that. My example is specific to an intersection where there should be a traffic light that had nothing to do with what the township was doing. So that was where I was going with it, more like it's difficult to provide an answer to which we don't have jurisdiction. And I think more often than not, the questions that we can't answer are ones that the citizens assume we should be able to answer.
Right. And that may be just making sure they understand what a township is.
Yeah.
What we, I'm sure, could have said there is we have approached Kent County with respect to a traffic light at that location, and they have said no, and they are the group ultimately responsible and the only one who can put in a traffic light.
Which is a function of courtesy
Right.
and being, and polite, all of these things, right? And I think that goes to the rules of conduct and how we should respond to the public, right?
Right.
As much as anything. So,
Agreed.
Yeah.
The way this is written, though, is so much in line with the stone faces that I see so regularly.
I think that's the trauma you've gone through.
Yeah, I
It's
agree.
PTSD.
Yeah.
Can I just add, though, that I think that, I guess I'll make one more case to not change this, is I don't think it's appropriate for our public participation to differ from any other meeting in the township, and this feels like it's in line with what's there. So
I
I understand
think
why
that
you're suggesting
that-
changing it, but if that's a suggestion, then it should be changed broadly, not just for our meetings, in hopes that others will follow.
Well,
I have to agree with you, because if you came here and spoke, then I would expect the same response.
You know,
if spoke somewhere else.
I've thought about this a little bit too, because I'll give you an example. On our agendas, we allow people 5 minutes to speak. The township board offers 3. But I would argue that the cases that we have in front of us a lot of times are more complex. I'm not trying to make it sound like we do more work in the township board.
we do.
I'm just saying, we have complex situations sometimes with the development where people have lots of questions because they haven't seen anything yet.
Or
And
it's
so
a
to-
personal interest.
To give them the benefit of a couple extra minutes, I think is beneficial here. Whereas by the time the topic here makes it to the township board, they should have already seen it a couple of times and had a couple of times to comment. They shouldn't need as much time at the township board level. I mean, it's the theory. Unfortunately, people skip all of these meetings and show up at the last second. But so I think there needs to be a little variation in some things, but I do agree with Member Rappin that we should try to be in line. But I think we can afford a little bit of a little bit of variance there. Yes.
My only comment would be, I would generally agree with Member Rappin. But if we're trying to make ourselves consistent with the board, then we all ought to just leave and resign.
I have a
Okay,
question. Back to G. Sorry.
I don't want to bash the board.
Back to
here,
G.
Craig.
Do we want to just change it then instead of saying we'll generally not respond? Because that means that in general, we will not respond, to say the planning commission will make a good faith effort to, somebody started this sentence and I wrote it.
I think I did actually. A good faith. Okay, planning commission will make I wrote down, planning commission will make effort to respond to questions timely at its discretion. Those were my notes, but I think I did use the word good faith.
We use the words where appropriate.
Okay.
Where appropriate. I
The planning
like that.
commission will make a good faith effort to respond to questions. What did you say?
Where
Wait, you
appropriate.
said something before that.
Questions timely
Okay.
at its discretion where appropriate.
I think that where appropriate needs to go a little earlier in the.
Yeah,
sentence.
it would start with that, where appropriate, the planning commission.
Okay. What, say that again?
Where
Where
appropriate,
appropriate.
comma, then
Yeah,
The planning commission will make a good faith
Effort
effort
to respond to questions timely at its
in a
discretion.
timely manner.
to respond to questions
In
in
We get paid by the word.
a timely.
timely manner.
I don't know who's getting
At
this
its
because I am not.
It's being
It'll be in the minutes. So I'm sure, right? Oh, yeah, yeah.
But I will take it so that when we review the minutes.
Before they come out, yeah.
Yeah,
I hear
The
something.
minutes will be slightly less long than the actual meeting? Okay,
I'm not so sure.
Me neither.
okay.
I cannot find.
We're just
that
moving at the
concept-
speed of efficient government.
I cannot find that concept anywhere in chapter 23,
Oh, okay.
just as a matter of interest.
So the attorney just took it upon himself to put it in there for us.
No, it's also in the block area, the block material at the head of the agenda for the Board of Trustees.
All right, but we're not the Board of
Basically
Trustees.
it's a salute with one of your fingers.
I don't want you to tear down our board, especially when we have a board member sitting right here.
Well,
I can't let you insult one of my friends down here at the end of the table.
You
Each
can
one of them
insult them all
shaking.
you want, just don't bring the PTSD to this meeting, please.
Okay, moving right along.
Let's see what else I have.
Well,
I may not have much else.
good.
Oh, come on.
Darn.
We do not have in here a provision as to when we may have closed meetings, though it does talk about closed meetings.
Where does it reference a closed meeting?
7.2.
Because we talked about closed meetings a little earlier.
Well, that's what I was saying, if we wanted to take disciplinary action against a PTSD impaired victim, that you'd at least give me a chance to respond to the charges.
Okay, so I guess I would like to understand when we're allowed to go into closed session,
And that is just some.
because
that
I don't
is-
believe we are.
Well,
I'm
that's an
guessing this is
interesting question.
boilerplate, right?
Well, you raise a fascinating question as to whether there are clearly in the Open Meetings Act a section on when the group can go into closed meeting. And there are certain times that it can, if it's going to do an employee evaluation, but we're not doing
Right.
those.
As chairman of the planning commission, I have a really simple way to solve this conundrum.
Which is,
And that is to ask staff to ask the attorney if there are times when the planning commission can enter into a closed session, and if so, what are they?
Sure.
and they may include, for example, if the township is being sued with respect to a development that the planning commission approved.
I would think that that's probably one of them,
Yep.
I would too.
but I don't know because that's never happened in my time being here.
And interesting you say that, because Round Hill, perhaps it should have.
Maybe, I don't know,
We should form a
because
subcommittee.
it didn't happen.
But the
Okay,
second time.
all right, you guys, we're getting way off track and it's getting
No,
late.
The second time it might be relevant is if you are attempting to take disciplinary action against a planning commission member.
I believe Brian's going to look.
Brian, can you specifically ask that question?
Sure.
Okay, that's item 1. The next item I had
Okay.
is Rule 9.
9. Oh, I like that. We're moving along. Okay, 9.
The
Township board in
board-
consultation with the planning commission may employ a zoning administrator, a planning director, or other personnel or consultants, contract for services of planning and other experts and technicians, provide support staff, and pay or authorize payment of expenses with funds budgeted for planning or zoning purposes by the township board.
And I just don't know, there was in the proposed budget that I heard about tonight, some discussion about planning commission expenses. Member Nord Hook,
Yes.
do you remember any of such discussions?
Does that have to do with, okay,
We were more talking about positions and redirecting positions, adding positions in the planning department.
And for example, one of the, I know as a Round Hill committee member, I am not making this recommendation. As a private citizen, I am. One of the recommendations we should have is that the planning commission, the planning director must be appointed or approved by the board of trustees.
that's what it says here.
Well, this is the expending, this is contract for service may employ. Okay,
Yeah, it says right on there, planning director.
and then this one would have to be put into the board.
Well, but it says here that it
Right.
has to happen in consultation with the
With us.
planning commission, and currently it does not.
I like that.
So this is written so that
This is
we
good.
have
I
input.
like this. Good. I like it.
And I'm just gonna go out here and say that the person that drafted that, if I'm not mistaken, Brian, that came from Ben, did it not? I believe that was his recommendation that we change that wording. So I'm just throwing that out there because credit is due.
Mhm.
If this
Where-
came from Ben, did this come from Ben?
I think so. I think he looked at that language in there to be in consultation.
He
with the
added
planning
in
commission.
consultation, I believe.
Okay,
With the
but he also added the township board. Because he was the person.
No, I believe I believe it previously said the township board may, he added the consultation with the planning commission.
Okay, that's a great add.
Yeah.
He was the one who told me, you want a planning director? Remember when we asked him who was the planning director? He says, I can write you a letter and appoint anyone the planning director. It's totally within the town manager's control. And given the amount of discretion the planning director has under the zoning ordinance, I don't think that's appropriate.
Well, that's not how it's worded here, so.
It's not. So this is a good
Argue this
change.
point.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to Rule 10, ex parte communication. We talked about
Eliminating it,
No, moving it to the rules.
to being a separate document with rules of conduct.
Yeah. eliminating it from here.
Right, Article 11. Or I'm sorry, Rule 11, which I think we're gonna change to articles. Is that right? Rules become articles?
Yes,
Yes.
that would be
I should make
wonderful.
a note of that. Rules to become articles.
I have hated rules my entire life.
All right. Okay.
He's in the nurses.
Oh,
So anything
Okay.
else for rule 11 or?
It doesn't really.
I guess where I'm at with this, you guys, is we've made a lot of draft changes here, and I think we can go through and staff can present us a new draft at our next meeting, and we can pick that one apart. But the question then is, we have to think about, do we approve that draft if we all agree with it at that time? So that we have some bylaws and then work through our
Rules of conduct.
rules of conduct and conflict and stuff. And then work towards an ultimate goal maybe of a much broader change with if we choose to do so, related to section 23. Or, I mean, because currently we have nothing.
Mhm.
So, I mean, depends on who you ask. I guess if you ask the old attorney, we have section 23. If it's
Right.
the new attorney, we have nothing. So,
No, the new
I-
attorney said we have section 23.
well, okay, but they're
they
recommending
weren't.
we have bylaws.
He said he wouldn't have them that way, but he
Right,
said,
but
yes.
that's what we have. So I guess what I'm saying is, do we, I want you guys to think that through. Because in my view, I would say we should, once we settle on a draft, we should approve it and make that our bylaws
I agree
until we
with
have a
you.
chance to modify.
I agree with you, but I think that we just hashed out a ton of stuff with this draft. So
Mhm.
when it comes back to us, my opinion is, I feel like we should have minor changes, maybe with wording or something, but I feel like we hashed out a lot of stuff. I don't want to act like it's day one again and spend
Same.
an hour and a half
No, I agree with
hashing
you.
through it
I
again.
agree with you. And that's why
I just
I'm.
feel like, I think that we have talked a lot. I took
Right, I agree. That's what I'm saying. I think at the next time we should be ready, if everything looks good, to potentially act on it.
Yes,
That's-
and we all got this before this meeting.
Yeah,
And we'll
it
get
had
it
it in
again
the, it was in the
Yes.
packet.
That's what I'm
Right?
saying, is we all got it before the meeting. So if we had something right now to talk about and hash out, the
Okay.
hashing should be done today.
Yes, the one comment I would make is, I would ask the lawyers, when they look at this as it has been changed, or with our suggested revisions, that we should also ask the question, because this I haven't gone back to do, is what else would normally be included that we have forgotten?
I think my opinion is that I agree with what you said originally, is this is something better than nothing. And it feels like we started this process, I don't know if it was June or when it was, when we first talked to the attorneys, that it's going to take that much longer for them to get back to us with more additions, that I feel like it would be great to be able to agree on something now, get it solidified. And then also, I do think we need to know what other townships have and what the normal is, but I think that that can be a future thing while we wait for them for a response.
Or alternatively, I can do my looking at what other bylaws in municipal settings are. And if there's something really important, I can send it to the chairman and distribute it for people to think about individually
I can,
before the next meeting.
yeah, I've done that before. I can do that again.
Then just, I guess, the last thing, it's been a while, so I'm gonna revisit this one more time. For Rule 1, Section 23, will we have an answer of whether this is going to be pulled out of the ordinance?
It is, my understanding is it is not until we make a recommendation to the township board to have it removed. And I think that gets complicated because that section is not just pertaining to us, but it's pertaining to the ZBA and other.
It's like it
other
needs to be
understand the
rewritten, the
timing
whole
of it.
section needs to.
Well,
be
and
rewritten.
it may need to be if we are disagreeing with it, but I think right now we have no disagreement with this section. So I think the township board is going to say, you don't have an argument, so there's no reason to
I
make a
think
change.
I just want to understand timing of, if we approve this, do we need to then deal with that, or are we okay approving this
I
regardless
think
of?
we're going to end up needing to deal with it and redraft section 23 to just eliminate the provisions that we have here in this document, because at some point in the future, we may want to amend this document, which we can then amend simply by sitting around like this and amending the provision
Right.
and not having to worry about chapter 23.
I just think they have to be, I think we have to deal with them in tandem. I think we
Right.
have to know
And-
before we approve
And,
this.
and maybe a way to get the township board to go along with that is to say that they have the ultimate say in approving our bylaws.
Well, and it's bad to
He's
have.
saying no. Well, I mean, because essentially that's if we are following, and so, yeah, that,
It is difficult though.
you
to
might be better off
have-
to stay with section 23 then if, I don't know what they'll
I
do.
don't think, all we're doing is giving ourselves more flexibility with regard to holding meetings and public participation, these things. The Board of Trustees, I can't imagine having a problem with this, so that may mean they will, in my continual disparagement of the Board of Trustees, this evening. If you had to participate in the budget workshop to know
Okay, well.
what they thought of us
All right.
as citizens.
Well, and
I-
the only comment I have is that it is difficult to have hidden things in section, whatever article or section 23 that we are changing and have a live document. I do think that's difficult. And I think that I would hope the township would agree that you don't want to have to change two separate documents consistently whenever you're making changes.
Sure. Well, then with that, let's move forward. So Jessica, Brian, does it seem feasible that we could have this next version of the draft for the December 20 meeting?
Yeah, I would think so I'll double check some of the notes with you guys here, but
Okay,
I think we could have them available for our next meeting there.
excellent. Thank you. All right, with that, I would like to continue the conversation on bylaws at the next meeting and move along related to the time here. Is that
That's fine.
reasonable? Everybody content with that?
I can deal with it.
Okay, with that, any other business? Does anybody have any other business to bring up? Oh, member Nordick.
I just had a question and I'm gonna regret asking it.
No, not at all. Any questions? A good question?
Any
Both
update
sides?
on the subcommittee around helps? Like when will we get some form of a report or?
We did that.
2 meetings
No,
ago.
I would-
Somewhat,
I mean, I thought there was something much more
Yeah.
detailed.
I would
It will-
recommend,
yeah, more points.
I would recommend that prior to the next meeting, we send out the current interim report that was unanimously approved at the subcommittee. I had a brief discussion with Treasurer Pierce about a number of things. And he said, where's the Round Hill report? And I said, well, we've done phase 1. Essentially, though it is interim because we've only done phase 1. And that he said, well, does it have recommendations? And I said, no, because those recommendations were going to be made by the Planning Commission. And that he said, well, then get it before the Planning Commission, quickly have them make recommendations. And so I would suggest that we put that on the agenda for the next meeting to have recommendations, at least with regard to the process, what we have discovered vis-a-vis the process and whether changes need to be made in that process that may affect a change to the zoning ordinance. For example, the definition of minor change.
If we're gonna make
we-
recommendations, we need to see a report first. I feel,
Right.
Because I can't make any recommendation based on.
I agree. And that is why we have a Round Hill Subcommittee meeting that was scheduled for this week, Friday, so that we could discuss this exact topic and decide how to come back to you guys on December 20.
Well, I
But
would.
we haven't created the agenda for the December 20 meeting yet because we haven't had the meeting of the subcommittee yet. So we didn't know what to put on the agenda yet. So I don't know what to tell you. But I do
think we
know
ought
that
to
we're
gear for
working
that.
on.
We ought to gear for that.
Well, I think we are. That's why we scheduled the meeting for Friday.
And
So, I mean,
and-
we're working towards it.
no, I would hope that we would be in a position after our meeting Friday to distribute within a day or so after that, an amended final interim report that can go to this commission and that everyone can read it and come up with their own thoughts and suggestions as to changes. And we included in that because we are just at that point 4 members of the commission.
Right, we can, at the commission on Friday, or the committee on Friday will potentially create a report that would, I would assume, be then emailed out to this committee so that it has the information that it needs prior to the December 20 meeting.
My request is, can we get suggested recommendations from the committee? You're a lot closer to it.
To me, that would be. in that
We're
report.
not, we are, my understanding is from what the attorney said, we have to be careful there. The committee,
We don't have to be careful anymore. Because
we
that was when
don't?
we were worried about the Open Meetings Act.
oh, but now because we're in an open meeting, we can just
We
discuss
can
it.
make recommendations. We did not want to presume to make recommendations to the
Aha,
commission because we thought that in fact, that might sort
Be a
of channel your
violation.
thinking.
right, okay,
But
I-
we
okay.
certainly can have,
all right, we don't need to talk about this any further because the answer is we're in the process of working down that path. We're just a little ahead.
Okay, but I
ahead
think
yet.
his point needs to be made that I think maybe we would like to see recommendations as
Suggested
well in the,
recommendations.
in the report.
The way the way we had drafted the report, it gives you a pretty strong indication, but we can make it clear. Like,
I just, you are.
Craig is
closer to
excellent
it.
at writing up reports
Yeah.
and we'll get him on it and you guys will know exactly what you need.
First 8 pages will spell that out.
That's exactly what I was thinking, like, hang on, wait a minute. I've read.
I think
some of
it's on
his
page
stuff.
17, actually.
He just said he gets paid by the word. Can we like condense this down?
but I'm not getting
Okay.
paid.
I need bullet points.
Other items of business, please. Any other items of business that anybody has? Because I have something, but I'll let you go first.
Well, I just want to make a comment that fill out your surveys. The township has sent those out to every mailbox in the township, and we really want to hear your opinion.
And if you have 2 of you in the house,
That was my
You
question.
get one survey,
No.
work it out.
no,
That was my question.
no, we had, for example, in our house, we filled out 2 online.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't do that. I just had one.
And
paper
the,
survey.
the problem I had online, by the way, which we should report back to the folks that, whatever that group is,
McKenna.
McKenna, is when they say prioritize your top 3 or top 5,
Yeah.
you have to do all of them,
You do, even if you don't want the others.
right?
I had a person talk to me about this. They were, first thing they said is the township must really want these answers because they continually send me surveys.
I'm,
And then,
Paper one, you can fill out 3 if that's all you want.
On the paper when you can,
But only
but
one person can fill it.
Yeah,
But-
but this is the first round. There's gonna be several more opportunities
Oh,
and
boy.
they're gonna focus it down, you know, so.
but I do think
we can bring that
that
up
we
in the
want
committee meeting. too.
every,
Fill them out, get it in. I need
That
the
goes
info.
we want
Okay.
every individual voter or resident that's over the age of 5. No, that's, I would say that is a responsible individual to fill one of these out. And my wife and I both filled them out and sent them in.
We are getting a lot of response, so that's good. This is what's gonna guide the township.
And I think just as a comment into what you said, is I do think we need to be cheerleaders to make sure people understand why there are so many. If you're not in the weeds of it and know some of the things going on, people think it is annoying that they're getting asked all these questions, but I do think we should be supportive.
Well, we're
Very
gonna be
much.
a pain. They're getting a lot more
Right,
questions.
but I think we need to be supportive when people complain about it and just be positive.
But
and
there are only,
explain
what,
why.
10 questions?
I tell people they need to be involved because.
Mhm.
It
I
did
don't like
take me
it when I
longer
hear
to
after
fill it
the
out than I
fact,
thought,
"What happened here? Hey,
because I had
you
to
weren't
think about
involved."
it.
Exactly.
Well, there's gonna be several more opportunities for us to bug everybody to get there.
But
Okay.
what this, there are only 3 or 4 of the sort of priority, which like most, what you want to deal with, want dealt with, et cetera. I think I forgot to fill out the last 2 questions, so I'm filling out a second one with just the last 2 questions answered.
Can we-
Okay, moving right along.
Thank you.
Us old people forget things.
I wanted to clear, well, did anybody else have any other business to bring up?
I do, but it's not important. It can
You
wait.
sure?
It can wait for another 2 months.
You
I
might
don't really
forget.
care. Nope. I
Okay.
will not forget.
All right. Just for clarification, because I looked this up, because I want to make sure that I am, the Open Meetings Act questions that were referenced earlier was a request that was made by Member Merlin, and it was responded to by the attorney on August 16th.
And we made the request.
And I think you made the request in May, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. And it was responded, the email was sent to Craig on August 16. He forwarded it to me later in the afternoon. It was addressed to him and myself. I received the email from the attorney on August 17th from Mike Holmeyer because he realized that I had not been included in the original email. And then
Did it have all the stuff it currently has in it?
it had, yeah, it was basically forwarded, the email that was sent to you on the 16th. But what's interesting here is it responded to the Open Meetings Act inquiry questions that Member Merlin had asked, and I don't even know if you were a member of the planning commission.
was.
Okay, he had asked, but what's interesting is that it specifically said that they were working on the bylaws issue. The bylaws did not come until October 15th.
The
So
other interesting.
I'm laying out this timeline so that you understand that this hasn't been something that has been festering and discussed and back and forth for a very long time. It really, the information is,
I didn't
not
even
been-
Yeah,
see it
and
at
I'm
the
not
time.
saying that. I'm just saying.
and
that
I didn't
have
take it as though you
heard-
were. I just want to make sure that everybody understands the background here.
That
and the-
Scott and I are incompetent rather than nefarious.
Right, but the incompetence doesn't just stop with you and I. Apparently, there's a whole chain of incompetence above us. So,
The other comment I would make is that when she responded to the OMA question, the OMA questions were irrelevant at that time because our
Absolutely.
subcommittee
had already
decided.
met. And we had already created the subcommittee and had the majority of our meetings. So it really, and she asked me if I had questions about it. And I was like, well, not anymore.
But
So,
what's
but
interesting
the
about it-
bylaws were, that was something that, we had this list of things that I'm trying to, work on and tidy up. And the reality is I'm trying to get to all of these things at the end of the year because I don't want to pass them on to whomever takes this seat after me in 2 meetings. So I'm just trying to get the house in order, so to speak.
We will so
before-
miss you as chair, actually.
What's that?
I will miss you as chair,
Oh, I appreciate hearing that, Greg, but
Maybe we put you back in there.
no, I have a two-year term and I'll be done in
It's a
2
little
meetings.
stressful all of a sudden.
we can put you back in violation of the bylaws.
Well, you guys are rewriting the
I was
bylaws.
like,
I mean,
wait a
whatever
minute.
you want.
How are we getting out of this?
I figure this is great because I won't be around to even have to approve these.
One other
you know?
thing to note in that memo, which, are
Sorry,
you
Chris.
you're gonna send it around?
I'm sorry, what?
You're gonna send around the open meetings
I
memo?
don't think, if the questions were in
I can
regards to
send
the
that
round
out.
hill, it
There's
doesn't
a
need to come out.
document in there that it references with, I think, Michigan State University that I think is very beneficial for everybody to read. It's a link that the attorney provided, and I think that's a really good document. It talks in detail about examples with ex parte communication. I really liked it. I don't know what your take is on it.
No, I like
but
that too.
But and in fact, I had asked Brian to include that when we discuss those. But again, that would happen at the first meeting in January. So again, these are all things that were in the stage as chairman, I think it says in here, I get to create the agendas and this is all information that I was using. Typically, it wouldn't have been shared with another member of the committee prior to the discussion, but in this case, it went to him first. So that's just the order that it came down.
Now, the other comment I would make is that it seemed to me in reading it, it was an Open Meetings Act response that was really responding to a whole set of different questions.
I think
There
some
was
of it
an-
had to do with the meeting that you chaired, if I'm not mistaken.
And
Yeah,
some
not
of
all
it
of
had to do with the appropriate authority of the Round Hill Subcommittee.
Right, which
For
is immaterial
example,
now because we've already.
when we were asked to look into the rumors surrounding Round Hill, that was part of our agenda.
Yes, that's true.
I continue to want to do that and intend to do it whether or not it's done through FOIA Act or the Planning Commission. But because we're getting pushback, and whenever we get pushback, it means we're getting near something. But in that way, it was talking about what we should have authority to do or not. And those were not questions we ever asked her to look at. So she was getting some extra input from somewhere. I don't know when, where, but all it did was make my spider senses tingle.
All right. Any other comments? Yes, remember.
My last one, we have a new planning commissioner in theory starting. Do you have a list of what you've heard from this group, Brian, on what we would have liked to see as we were new, planning commission members? So that when they start, you can provide them.
Sure. Yep.
What do you have?
You're saying.
Section
When some
23 rules
I
of
took that as
conduct.
a statement as well, just so
Yeah.
you know.
It was a statement, but when you applied in the affirmative, I thought I would follow up on it.
So we start with at least sending them the links to our comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance, so we can include things like, the bylaws we're working on here. Ideally, we'd have a book, at least I think in the past, I haven't done too many of these with new planning commission members, but ideally, do a quick little sit down and say, hey, what questions do you have? What can we go over?
That'd be awesome. Maybe a plat of the township too, so they have a sense of where everything is. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. That was very good. Yes, Member Moxley.
When I first joined, the community development director sent me or gave me a large map showing all the PUDs in the community, and that's been very helpful.
Oh, that would be.
I would
helpful.
like
That'd be very
that.
helpful.
I would too.
I mean, I haven't seen that. That would be very helpful.
You
We
have
have
seen
more of
it
those,
actually, I
Brian.
think, when we met.
In color.
I have seen it.
Oh, maybe, because it used to sit in the background of all of his Zoom, when we met on
Right,
Zoom,
and
it
I've
was always
seen-
in his background.
Yes.
It was very appropriate background.
He gave it to me. I
How
filled on.
how big was that?
It's
I-
big, it's big.
Big.
Get to the
Because
printer. We
he
need
let
at
me
least
take
4
that.
of them.
He let me take that to the elementary school once. I was asked to come in and talk to the kids, and I gave me that in I think a big aerial of the township. I carried into the
Well, the
school.
aerial photograph
Kids
is
really
actually a
liked it.
budget line item we get every year.
Brian, when you send that out at the beginning of the year, can you send it to all of us?
I can send the PDF for sure, and if people want a full printed one, I can work on that too, but I can send the
I don't
PDF
really have a
tomorrow.
wall for it. I'm just joking, but I would like to see it.
No, I mean, I think she's
It
talking
is.
about all of them.
Okay.
Oh,
All,
Yeah,
the
I
whole
was talking
packet.
about, all of it. Yeah.
Mhm.
I think it would be great that we have a common document that we all
I know I
have.
got stuff when I first started, but I feel like I didn't even, and maybe I missed it, which is totally possible, but I don't even recall seeing the meeting agenda for this year.
Calendar.
schedule.
The can't, yeah.
I don't believe that the planning commission had been approving the schedule in the past. That is an error. And I think that was one of the things that Ben said we need to do here when we.
We're looking
when
through the bylaws.
Met with him. We were looking at the bylaws, or maybe you brought that up, Brian,
Actually,
but
It's in.
it's in
chapter
section 23.
Well, I
Yes,
think
and
it's
that's,
on
and
the,
that's, we.
I think it's
we-
on the website too,
Mhm.
That's
but
how I've got it.
yeah, but it would be
No, but
nice
I mean,
if when things come
We're
out.
talking about
Yeah,
new
we do
people.
try to have
Right.
that
for
at
new
the first
people,
meeting
that
of the
just
year.
Send it to everybody.
Yes, the voting, I guess, on it is what I was referring to, but usually it's in the first meeting packet of the year. We would have the calendar, the rules of conduct, ex parte communication. What probably should have been there and hasn't been would have been a link to section 23 in the past. I think that would have been very beneficial, and it was not there. But if we come up with bylaws, we can put those there in their in that
Right.
place.
And interestingly, that topic right there is one where bylaws would be so much better than chapter 23. Because chapter 23 says thou shalt meet on first and third Mondays of each month.
Right, I see where you're going.
Bylaws
Yeah.
say our goal is to meet the first and third Mondays of each month. But
Okay.
we can be flexible.
I agree. Anybody have a motion to adjourn at this time?
So moved.
Support.
Thank you, member Deering and member Rappin. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No, I'm not opposed. I'm with.
Thank you, member Merlin.
Just, I don't.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
June 21, so you would not.
Make sure you shut down your electronic devices.
I even went back, I found someone.
I have two